The most important decisions you'll ever make probably won't feel important when you make them. No dramatic music will play. No audience will applaud. No one will stop what they're doing to congratulate you. In fact, some of the decisions that will shape your entire future may look so ordinary that you'll be tempted to ignore them altogether. A young father decides to put his phone away before walking through the front door, so his children receive his attention instead of what is left after everyone else has taken it. A university student studies for another 30 minutes after becoming tired, not because an exam is tomorrow, but because she wants to become the kind of person who keeps promises to herself. A mechanic quietly saves a small amount from every paycheck while his friends spend theirs trying to look successful. An immigrant spends 1 extra hour every evening learning a language that nobody notices he's struggling to master. None of these moments will ever appear in a newspaper. Yet years later, they may explain almost everything about the lives these people eventually build. We often imagine that success arrives through extraordinary opportunities, life-changing conversations, or one bold decision that suddenly transforms everything. Reality is usually quieter than that. Our lives are more often shaped by thousands of ordinary decisions that seem too small to matter until enough of them quietly accumulate into a completely different future. This creates a fascinating question. If small decisions are so powerful, why do intelligent people repeatedly ignore them? Why do we know what will improve our lives, yet so often choose something easier, faster, or more comfortable instead? The answer isn't that human beings are lazy. It isn't that we lack ambition or intelligence. The answer is more interesting than that. Our brains were designed to solve immediate problems far more efficiently than distant ones. They reward us for certainty, familiarity, and quick emotional relief, even when those rewards quietly steal opportunities from our future selves. This invisible conflict happens every day. It explains why we postpone difficult conversations, why we spend money we intended to save, why we compare ourselves to strangers, why we abandon healthy habits after a stressful week, and why so many people wake up years later wondering where the time went. We often believe we're making isolated choices, but we're actually reinforcing patterns. Every repeated action teaches the brain what kind of person we believe we are. Every repeated avoidance quietly teaches it the same thing. That's why this episode isn't really about working in silence, productivity, or discipline. It's about understanding what are the hidden forces that determines the quality of nearly every life. The relationship between today's ordinary decisions and tomorrow's extraordinary consequences. Together, we'll investigate why our minds resist meaningful change, why some people continue growing while others keep restarting, and how a handful of practical habits, supported by psychology rather than empty motivation, can gradually transform the direction of an ordinary life. Along the way, I won't ask you to become someone else. I'll ask something much simpler and much more powerful. I'll ask you to pay attention to the quiet decisions you've stopped noticing. Because hidden inside those unnoticed moments is a question that almost nobody asks, yet it may determine more of your future than talent, luck, or intelligence ever will. Who are you becoming while no one is watching? There is a moment that happens in almost every person's life, and it is so ordinary that most of us never notice it. Imagine a young professional driving home after another long day at work. The commute is the same as yesterday. The traffic lights haven't changed. The familiar roads pass beneath the tires while tomorrow's responsibilities quietly begin competing for attention. At one red light, almost without thinking, the phone is unlocked. A few messages become a few videos. A few videos become news headlines. Before the light turns green, someone else's vacation appears on the screen. Then a promotion. Then an engagement. Then a new business. Then someone celebrating a fitness transformation. By the time the drive home is over, nothing in this person's own life has changed. Their paycheck is the same. Their family is the same. Their opportunities are the same. Yet something profoundly important has happened. Without realizing it, they have accepted an invitation to compare the unfinished story of their own life with the carefully edited highlights of hundreds of strangers. The comparison feels harmless because it lasts only a few minutes, but the human brain treats comparison very differently than we imagine. Long before social media existed, our ancestors constantly measured themselves against the people around them because belonging to a group often meant survival. Being respected increased cooperation. Being excluded increased danger. Our brains evolved to notice status because for thousands of years, status often influenced whether we receive protection, resources, or opportunities to reproduce. The modern world has changed much faster than our biology. Today, we compare ourselves not with 20 or 30 members of a village, but with millions of carefully curated lives that we were never designed to process. The result is a quiet form of psychological exhaustion. We begin to believe everyone else is moving faster. Everyone else is happier. Everyone else has discovered a secret that somehow escaped us. This feeling has a name in psychology: social comparison. It is neither good nor bad by itself. Sometimes it inspires growth. More often, when left unchecked, it quietly steals something much more valuable than happiness. It steals direction. Once your attention shifts from building your own life to monitoring someone else's, your energy begins flowing toward problems that are not yours to solve. You stop asking, "What matters most today?" and start asking, "Why am I not where they are?" That single shift changes the quality of every decision that follows. You hesitate before taking risks because someone else appears further ahead. You postpone learning because another person seems naturally talented. You delay beginning because you imagine you're already behind. The tragedy is that none of these conclusions are based on reality. They are based on incomplete information. We are comparing our private struggles with another person's public moments. Imagine walking into a movie halfway through and deciding your own life should already look like the ending you just witnessed. It would seem irrational, yet many of us do exactly that every day. Here's something worth remembering. Comparison doesn't merely influence emotions, it changes behavior. A discouraged mind takes fewer chances. A distracted mind notices fewer opportunities. A doubtful mind avoids difficult conversations that could change its future. This is why protecting your attention is one of the most important forms of self-respect. Not because the world is full of distractions, but because your future is quietly shaped by whatever repeatedly earns your attention. So here is your first practical experiment, simple enough to begin today, powerful enough to change the direction of your week. For the next 24 hours, pay attention to every moment you compare your life to someone else's. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to stop it immediately. Simply notice it. Write each moment down if you can. Awareness always comes before change. You cannot redesign a pattern you cannot see. Most people spend years trying to fix their confidence without ever discovering what has been quietly draining it in the first place. And as important as comparison is, it is not the deepest force shaping your future. Beneath every comparison lies something even more powerful, something so ordinary that almost nobody questions it, even though it quietly determines the direction of nearly every life. It begins with where you place your attention. If comparison quietly changes the direction of our lives, then attention determines whether we ever notice it happening. Every morning, before most people have spoken their first sentence, they have already surrendered one of the most valuable assets they possess. Not money, not time, attention. The two are often confused, but they are profoundly different. Everyone receives the same 24 hours each day, yet those hours do not create equal lives because time alone has never built anything. Attention is what transforms time into learning, relationships, craftsmanship, wisdom, health, and purpose. Wherever your attention repeatedly goes, your future quietly follows. Imagine standing in the middle of a vast field holding a flashlight at night. The light is powerful, but it can only illuminate one small area at a time. Wherever you point it becomes your reality. Everything outside that beam still exists, but for that moment it disappears from your awareness. Your mind works in much the same way. Every notification, every headline, every advertisement, every argument, every endless scroll competes for that beam of light. Most of us believe we're making conscious choices about where our attention goes, but much of modern life has been carefully designed to make those choices for us. Digital platforms, advertising, and endless streams of information compete not because your attention is free, but because it is extraordinarily valuable. The longer they hold it, the less remains for your own goals, your family, your creativity, and your peace of mind. The cost isn't simply lost productivity. It's a fragmented life. Researchers who study human attention have found that when we rapidly switch between tasks, our minds don't immediately let go of the previous one. Part of our thinking stays behind, lingering on the message we just read, the conversation we just had, or the video we just watched. This phenomenon, often called attention residue, means that although your body has moved to the next activity, part of your mind is still somewhere else. It's like trying to read a book while someone quietly whispers in your ear. You may still read every page, but your understanding becomes shallower because your concentration is divided. This explains why so many people end a busy day feeling mentally exhausted despite accomplishing very little that truly mattered. They weren't working on one important thing. They were recovering from dozens of interruptions. And here's the hidden danger. A distracted mind begins making smaller decisions. Instead of asking, what kind of life am I building? It starts asking, what feels easiest right now? That subtle shift changes careers, relationships, finances, and health, not in a single dramatic moment, but one unnoticed choice at a time. Think of a pilot flying across the ocean. If the plane leaves its course by only a few degrees, the error seems insignificant during the first few miles. Hours later, it lands in an entirely different country. Human attention works the same way. Tiny daily distractions rarely feel dangerous because each one is small. But over months and years, they quietly redirect the destination of our lives. This is why protecting your attention isn't selfish. It's an act of responsibility. The quality of your attention determines the quality of your decisions, and the quality of your decisions determines the quality of your future. So here's today's practical experiment, and I encourage you to actually try it rather than simply agreeing with it. Create what I call the protected hour. Choose 1 hour tomorrow when your mind is naturally at its best. During that hour, silence your notifications, place your phone in another room, close every unnecessary tab, and commit yourself to one meaningful task that moves your life forward. Not the easiest task, not the most urgent task, the one that will still matter a year from now. At first, your mind will resist. You'll feel the urge to check your phone, answer messages, or switch tasks. That's normal. You're not experiencing a lack of discipline. You're noticing habits that have quietly trained your attention for years. Don't judge yourself. Simply return your focus to the work. Each return is a repetition, and every repetition strengthens your ability to direct your own life instead of reacting to everyone else's. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The world becomes a little quieter, not because the distractions disappear, but because you've learned that attention is a decision, not an accident. And once you begin reclaiming your attention, another question naturally emerges. If we can choose where our attention goes, who is making those choices? The answer leads us to the most powerful force in lasting personal change, the story we believe about ourselves. Long before we change our lives, we quietly decide what kind of person we believe we are. The decision is rarely deliberate. It isn't written down, announced to the world, or even spoken out loud. It forms gradually through years of experiences, comments from other people, successes we remember, failures we never fully let go of, and conclusions we reached when we were far too young to understand ourselves. A child struggles with mathematics and begins believing, I'm just not smart. A teenager is rejected and quietly concludes, I'm not someone people choose. A young employee is overlooked for a promotion and starts thinking, people like me never get ahead. These moments pass quickly, but the stories they create can remain for decades. The remarkable thing is that most people don't realize they're living inside a story at all. They believe they're describing reality when, in fact, they're describing an interpretation of reality. Imagine walking through life wearing a pair of glasses with slightly tinted lenses. After wearing them long enough, the tint no longer seems unusual. You simply assume that's what the world looks like. Identity works in much the same way. We stop questioning the assumptions we've repeated for years because they begin to feel like facts. Yet psychology tells us something profoundly hopeful. The brain is not nearly as fixed as we once believed. Throughout our lives, it continues to reorganize itself through experience, repetition, and deliberate practice. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to form new pathways based on what we repeatedly think, feel, and do. This means your identity is not carved into stone. It is more like a path through a forest. Every time you walk the same route, it becomes easier to follow. But if you begin taking a different path often enough, the old one slowly grows over, while the new one becomes the natural direction to travel. The difficulty is that our brains are designed to conserve energy. Familiar patterns feel safe, even when they no longer serve us. That's why people often cling to identities that make them unhappy. They're familiar. A person who repeatedly says, I've never been disciplined, isn't simply making an observation. They're giving their brain instructions about what to expect from future behavior. The next time they avoid exercise, postpone an important conversation, or abandon a personal goal, the action feels consistent with who they believe they are. This creates a dangerous cycle. The identity shapes the behavior, and the behavior appears to confirm the identity. Eventually, it becomes difficult to remember which came first. But there is another cycle, one that quietly transforms lives. Instead of trying to become a completely different person overnight, begin collecting evidence that challenges your old story. If you've always believed you're disorganized, don't promise yourself a perfect month. Organize one drawer today. If you've believed you're unhealthy, don't imagine running a marathon. Take a 15-minute walk before dinner. If you've believed you're terrible with money, don't wait until your income changes. Save $5 this week. The size of the action matters far less than the message it sends to your mind. Every completed action becomes evidence. Every piece of evidence weakens an old identity and strengthens a new one. Confidence is not something you think your way into. It is something you repeatedly prove to yourself. This is why lasting change almost never begins with motivation. Motivation is emotional and temporary. Identity grows through evidence, and evidence grows through action. Here's your practical experiment for this chapter. Tonight, take a sheet of paper and write one sentence that begins with the words, "I've always been the kind of person who..." Don't overthink it. Simply write the first belief that comes to mind. Then ask yourself one question. Who told me this story? Was it your own experience? Or was it built from one failure, one careless comment, one difficult season, or someone else's opinion? Finally, write one small action you can complete tomorrow that proves the opposite is possible. Not because you suddenly believe it, but because evidence always speaks louder than opinion. You don't rewrite your identity by arguing with the old story. You rewrite it by living a different one until your mind can no longer deny the truth. And once that story begins to change, another remarkable transformation becomes possible. Because even with a healthier identity, there is still an invisible force that quietly shapes nearly every decision you make without asking for your permission. It isn't your willpower. It's your environment. Walk into your home tonight as though you've never lived there before. Imagine you're not the owner, but an investigator who has been asked to answer one simple question. What kind of life does this place naturally encourage? Don't look at the furniture. Look at the invisible instructions hidden inside it. Is the television the first thing your eyes meet when you enter the living room, or is there a chair that quietly invites conversation? Is your phone waiting beside your bed before you even close your eyes, silently suggesting that tomorrow should begin with notifications instead of your own thoughts? Are healthy foods visible and convenient, or hidden behind shelves of things chosen because they are quick and comforting? Is there a book within easy reach, or would it take less effort to open another app than to open another page? Most people believe their surroundings are simply where life happens. Behavioral scientists have discovered something far more interesting. Our surroundings constantly shape our decisions, often without our awareness. Human beings like to think they make choices through logic and willpower, yet much of our behavior is influenced by what psychologists call choice architecture, the way our environment presents options before conscious thought even begins. A classic example can be found in something as ordinary as a cafeteria. When fruit is placed at eye level and desserts require a little more effort to reach, people consistently make healthier choices, not because they suddenly become more disciplined, but because the environment quietly changes what feels easiest. The same principle operates throughout our lives. If your running shoes are already by the front door, exercising requires one less decision. If your guitar sits on a stand instead of inside a closet, you're more likely to practice. If your savings are transferred automatically before you see your paycheck, you're less likely to spend what you never felt you had. None of these examples depend on becoming a different person overnight. They depend on respecting an uncomfortable truth. Willpower is valuable, but it is unreliable. Every day, your mind spends energy solving problems, making decisions, handling emotions, and responding to unexpected events. By evening, even intelligent people often choose convenience over intention, not because they lack character, but because mental energy is limited. This is why systems outperform promises. A good system quietly carries you forward on days when motivation disappears. Think about a river flowing downhill. It doesn't struggle to move in one direction because the landscape guides it there. Now imagine trying to push that same river uphill. That's what many people do with their lives. They design environments that constantly tempt them away from the future they say they want, then blame themselves for lacking discipline when they eventually give in. But the real problem was never a weak mind. It was a landscape working against them. Here's a question worth asking yourself. If a stranger moved into your home tomorrow and lived exactly as your environment encourages, what kind of person would they become after 5 years? Would they become healthier? More thoughtful? Better with money? Closer to their family? More creative? Or would they become distracted, reactive, overwhelmed, and exhausted? The answer reveals more than you might expect because environments quietly shape habits, habits shape days, days shape years, and years quietly become lives. So here's your experiment for this chapter. Choose just one area of your life that you genuinely want to improve. Don't attempt a complete transformation. Instead, redesign one part of your environment so that the better choice becomes the easier choice. Leave tomorrow's clothes ready tonight. Place a notebook where your phone usually rests. Keep fresh water within reach of your desk. Move distractions farther away than opportunities. Small changes in environment often create surprisingly large changes in behavior because they remove unnecessary decisions from your day. The goal isn't to become stronger than temptation every single morning. The goal is to become wise enough that temptation has fewer opportunities to interrupt the life you're intentionally building. And once your environment begins working with you instead of against you, something remarkable happens. Progress starts feeling less like a battle and more like a natural direction of travel. Yet even then, one final obstacle remains, an obstacle that has quietly ended more dreams than failure itself. It isn't difficulty. It's the mistaken belief that progress should always feel fast. Picture two oak trees growing in the same valley. During the first few years, neither seems remarkable. Their trunks are thin, their branches modest, and to anyone passing by they appear almost identical. Then the seasons continue. One survives drought after drought because its roots have slowly reached deeper into the earth. The other never develops the same foundation because it depended on shallow moisture near the surface. Decades later, one tree stands through storms that break the other apart. Most people looking at that moment call it strength, but the strength was never created during the storm. It was quietly built during thousands of ordinary days when nothing dramatic seemed to be happening. Human lives follow the same pattern. We admire confidence without seeing the years spent earning it. We envy financial security without witnessing the countless ordinary choices that protected it. We respect wisdom without recognizing the thousands of books read, conversations held, mistakes reflected upon, and uncomfortable truths accepted along the way. Our culture celebrates visible results while overlooking the invisible accumulation that made those results possible. This creates one of the greatest illusions of modern life. We begin believing that success happens suddenly. A company appears to become successful overnight, ignoring the decade of failures that came before it. An athlete seems to emerge from nowhere, while thousands of unseen hours of training remain invisible. A marriage appears effortless because no one witnessed the years of small conversations, forgiveness, compromise, and trust that quietly strengthened it. The problem isn't simply that we misunderstand success. It's that we judge our own progress using the wrong timeline. We expect today's effort to produce tomorrow's transformation, and when it doesn't, we mistakenly conclude that our effort wasn't working. Psychologists have long observed something called present bias, our tendency to value immediate rewards far more than future ones. It's why spending money today often feels more satisfying than saving it for retirement. It's why eating dessert feels easier than investing in long-term health. It's why scrolling through another hour of entertainment can seem more appealing than practicing a skill whose reward may not arrive for years. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you by choosing certainty over uncertainty. The challenge is that nearly everything meaningful in life asks us to make small investments long before the rewards become visible. Learning a language feels frustrating before it becomes natural. Strength training feels uncomfortable before it becomes empowering. Building trust feels slow before it becomes unshakable. The greatest mistake people make isn't choosing the wrong destination. It's abandoning the journey because the first mile doesn't look like the last. Imagine watching a sculptor strike a block of marble. The first strike changes almost nothing. Neither does the 10th. To an impatient observer, it would seem pointless. But the sculptor understands that every careful strike changes the structure beneath the surface. Eventually, a beautiful figure emerges, not because of one extraordinary blow, but because every deliberate action prepared the stone for the next. Your character develops the same way. Every honest conversation makes the next one easier. Every morning you keep a promise to yourself strengthens your integrity. Every difficult decision made according to your values quietly reinforces the person you're becoming. This is why consistency is far more powerful than intensity. Intensity creates exciting beginnings. Consistency creates transformed lives. Here's your practical experiment, and I encourage you to try it for the next 30 days. At the end of each evening, ask yourself just one question. Am I 1% closer to the person I hope to become than I was yesterday? Don't measure perfection. Measure direction. Some days your answer will be yes. Other days it may honestly be no. That's perfectly acceptable because awareness creates adjustment. The goal isn't to win every day. The goal is to avoid drifting through life without noticing where you're headed. Tiny improvements may seem insignificant today, but they possess a remarkable quality. They compound. Just as interest quietly grows inside an investment account, small decisions quietly accumulate inside a human life until one day people call your transformation remarkable, forgetting that it was built through thousands of choices too small for anyone else to notice. Yet there is one final lesson that makes all the others possible. It is the difference between simply improving your life and living a life that truly matters. And it begins with a question that every person must eventually answer for themselves. What kind of legacy are your daily decisions quietly creating? Imagine meeting yourself exactly 10 years from today. Not the version of you that exists in your imagination, but the one your daily decisions have quietly created. Picture that future version sitting across the table from you. Their face carries the marks of years fully lived. Their voice is calm, not because life became easier, but because they learned which battles were worth fighting and which worries were never worth carrying. Now imagine asking them one question. What changed everything? Most of us expect the answer to be dramatic. We imagine hearing about the perfect opportunity, the life-changing investment, the unexpected promotion, or the single courageous decision that altered the course of everything. But I suspect the answer would be far quieter. Your future self would probably smile and say, "Nothing changed overnight. I simply stopped waiting for my life to become different and began making decisions that were consistent with the person I wanted to become." That answer sounds almost disappointingly ordinary until you realize how profoundly rare it has become. Modern life encourages us to search constantly for breakthroughs, shortcuts, and moments of sudden transformation. We wait for Monday, for the new year, for the next job, for the right relationship, for more confidence, more money, more certainty. We quietly convince ourselves that the life we've imagined is waiting somewhere in the future, just beyond one more achievement. But what if the future has been quietly arriving every single day? What if every ordinary decision you've made this week has already begun building the person you'll become 5 years from now? The conversation you avoided, the apology you finally offered, the extra hour you spent learning instead of scrolling, the evening you chose to eat dinner with your family without looking at your phone, the money you saved instead of spending, the book you finished, the promise you kept. None of these moments announced themselves as life-changing. Yet together they became the architecture of an entirely different life. This may be the greatest misunderstanding about personal growth. We think our future is built by extraordinary events, when in reality it is quietly constructed by ordinary decisions repeated with extraordinary consistency. Every decision is like placing another stone into a bridge you will one day need to cross. At the time, each stone feels insignificant. You wonder whether it matters. You question whether anyone notices. But life has an interesting way of revealing the importance of small decisions only after enough of them have accumulated. One day the bridge is there when you need it. One day trust exists because you spent years telling the truth. One day financial security exists because you repeatedly chose tomorrow over today. One day your children remember that you were present because hundreds of evenings earlier, you decided to put your phone away before walking through the front door. One day your body carries you through old age because years before, you decided that health was not something to chase after losing it, but something to protect while you still had it. Looking backward, these lives appear fortunate. Looking closely, they reveal something else entirely. They reveal decisions. That is why I believe one of the most dangerous questions we ask ourselves is, will this matter tomorrow? Tomorrow is too small a measure for a meaningful life. A better question is, who am I becoming because of this decision? Suddenly, the argument you were about to start feels different. The purchase you were about to make feels different. The hour you were about to waste feels different. The difficult conversation you've been avoiding feels different. That single question shifts your attention from temporary emotion to lasting character. It reminds you that every decision casts a vote for the person you are slowly becoming. And here's the remarkable part. You don't have to make perfect decisions. No human being ever has. You will make mistakes. You will lose your way. You will have seasons when fear speaks louder than wisdom, and comfort feels more attractive than growth. Those moments do not define your future. What defines your future is your willingness to return. Return to your values. Return to your purpose. Return to your family. Return to your health. Return to your integrity. Return to the quiet decisions that build a meaningful life. Because in the end, your life will not be remembered as a collection of intentions. It will be remembered as a collection of decisions. Some will be visible to the world. Most will never be seen by anyone else. Yet those unseen decisions will quietly become your reputation, your relationships, your legacy, and ultimately the person staring back at you in a mirror. The life you dream about is not waiting somewhere in the distance. It is being built, one uncharted decision at a time. As our time together comes to an end, I'd like you to resist the temptation to think about changing your entire life. Human beings often make that mistake. We leave inspired conversations determined to transform everything at once, only to discover that overwhelming ambition rarely survives ordinary Monday mornings. Lasting change has never demanded perfection. It has always asked for awareness. Awareness of where your attention goes. Awareness of the stories you tell yourself. Awareness of the environments quietly shaping your choices. Awareness that today's ordinary decision is already becoming tomorrow's reality. If this episode has revealed anything, I hope it's this: your future has never been hiding behind one extraordinary opportunity. It has been quietly waiting inside thousands of ordinary moments that seem too small to matter. Every time you choose learning over distraction, courage over comfort, presence over convenience, honesty over avoidance, or patience over impulse, you are casting another vote for the person you are becoming. Those votes may feel invisible today, but life has a remarkable memory. It remembers what we repeatedly choose. Long after the excitement of a new goal has faded, long after motivation has come and gone, your decisions remain, patiently building the architecture of your character. One day you'll look back and realize that the life you thought appeared gradually was actually being built quietly, one ordinary decision at a time. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Meaning isn't found by waiting for extraordinary days. Meaning is created by treating ordinary days as if they matter, because they do. Every conversation, every promise, every act of kindness, every difficult choice, every moment when nobody is watching. These are the places where a meaningful life is quietly constructed. And the beautiful truth is that you don't have to be extraordinary to begin. You only have to become a little more intentional than you were yesterday. That's a future available to every one of us. Before we part, I'd like to leave you with your uncharted decision. Within the next 24 hours, choose one small action that your future self will quietly thank you for. It doesn't need to impress anyone. Don't announce it. Don't post about it. Don't wait for the perfect time. Simply do it. Read the first chapter. Make the phone call. Take the walk. Put the phone away during dinner. Save the first dollar. Tell someone you love them. Apologize. Forgive. Begin. Then, when that decision is finished, pause for a moment and ask yourself a different question than most people ever do. If I continue making decisions like this for the next 10 years, who will I become? That question is far more powerful than asking where you'll be, because where you'll be is simply the consequence of who you're becoming. If today's conversation challenged the way you think, helped you understand yourself a little better, or gave you one practical idea that could genuinely improve your life, then you've experienced exactly what uncharted decision exists to create. This channel isn't built on empty motivation or quick fixes. It's built on timeless ideas, practical wisdom, and the psychology behind the everyday choices that shape extraordinary lives. If that's the kind of journey you want to continue, I invite you to subscribe and become part of this growing community. Every episode is another investigation into the hidden forces that shape our minds, our relationships, our work, our purpose, and ultimately the quality of the lives we build. Share this episode with someone who is quietly trying to become a better version of themselves. You may never know how much one thoughtful conversation can change the direction of another person's life. Until our paths cross again, remember this: your future is not waiting for you somewhere down the road. It is quietly being built by the decision you make next. Choose it carefully. Choose it intentionally. And above all, remember that the most important decisions in life are rarely the loudest. They are the quiet, uncharted decisions that nobody applauds, but that eventually become the story of who you are. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of the people who matter most, and keep building a life that your future self will be grateful to inherit.